The Slayer Council compound. Evening. Willow watched her friends being placed into the Humvees. She couldn't think of calling Buffy and the others her former friends, despite everything that had happened. She simply could not. Her throat still burned as she scanned the building with her mind. There were no other living beings nearby. She looked to her left when she sensed someone watching her. It was Faith. Their eyes met, and Willow remembered that dream once again, the one where Dream Faith had suggested they go on a date. Willow turned to O'Neill and spoke into his mind. "Sir, I'll be right back." Willow nodded, while Carter spoke quietly into her phone. It was pressed to her ear, her tone hushed, but Willow caught words like urgent and healing device. She headed toward the last Humvee, moving past the others where the rest of the Scoobies sat in the rear compartments. Faith had taken part in what had happened in the building behind her. She, Angel, and Josh. Willow didn't know Josh, so his well-being was not at the forefront of her concern, if she were honest. Still, Faith had apparently surrendered herself. Willow tapped the shoulder of the soldier, ensuring that Faith, whose hands were zip-tied, was secure. The young man turned and gave Willow a questioning look. She gestured toward the Humvee in front of them, silently directing him to check the passengers in the next vehicle. He inclined his head and moved off. Willow gripped the door and stared at Faith, who released a deep breath before turning toward her. "I'm sorry," Faith murmured. Willow inclined her head. She glanced around to make sure no one was nearby before focusing on Faith again. "You surrendered." Faith's eyes widened in surprise before narrowing in confusion. "Red," she replied. "I heard you in my head. You said... B said you don't do magic anymore and... Wait, why is your voice in my head? Buffy wanted to know what I do for a living. So she had Giles cast a truth spell." Faith shook her head. "She told me she would do something. I thought you would tell her what you do when..." She exhaled sharply and shook her head again. Willow couldn't quite decipher the expression on her face. It was a mixture of regret and something else. Something Willow could not name, though she felt it as a sinking sensation within herself, like falling into a cool, hollow space. Willow drew in a steady breath through her nose because her throat burned from the severed cords as she responded mentally. "And this isn't magic. I guess it's more genetic than anything." A fleeting smirk crossed Faith's face. "So, what's gonna happen now? I mean, how bad is it gonna get?" Willow honestly did not know. During her earlier mental exchange with O'Neill while they exited the compound, he had mentioned that the consequences could be severe. They had held an Air Force officer against her will, hacked into federal databases, and potentially committed several other offenses. There would also be questions about why they had acted so destructively. Even he was uncertain about what would follow, especially without knowing whether mitigating factors had led up to this. Teal'c had asked Willow what outcome she wanted to see. She had never answered. She was angry about what had happened. She felt betrayed. At the same time, she suspected everything stemmed from whatever had occurred during the Unmaker War. She was certain the Initiative fiasco and Adam had also played a part. Red? Willow blinked, realizing she had drifted into thought. Faith was watching her, waiting. "I have no idea. It could be bad, Faith. You hate us?" "I'm angry, but I'll be debriefed by my CO soon and I'll put in a good word for all of you. You've saved the world enough times to deserve that." "You think they're gonna believe demons and vampires exist?" "You'll be surprised what they'll believe." Faith studied her for a few seconds before letting out a quiet chuckle. "So," she added, just as O'Neill called out to Willow, "I guess a date's out of the question?" Willow let out a soft laugh and lifted one shoulder. "One day, maybe." If you're enjoying this chapter so far, consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps support the series. And if you know a Buffy or Stargate fan who would love this crossover, feel free to share it with them. She closed the rear door of the Humvee and turned away. She had taken only a few steps toward O'Neill when she stopped abruptly, pivoted back, and reopened the door, concern etched across her face. Faith, are there any artifacts inside the building we should know about? Anything dangerous that needs to be secured? I mean, anything world-ending? Faith shook her head. G-Man said all the heavy-duty spell stuff is locked away in some secret Watcher Council vaults. She continued, explaining that the Unmaker had not struck those locations and that Giles was still trying to determine why. There's just some spell books. She watched Willow closely before adding, I don't know why you're not actually speaking, and I can tell from how tense you are that you don't want to. So I'm not gonna pry. Whatever happened must have happened when you were with Buffy and the others. Willow inclined her head. Whatever it was, Faith continued, I'm guessing you're pissed at Giles and Bee, and Dawn, and the rest of them. Willow inhaled carefully and winced as her neck burned from her severed cords. She nodded. Faith pressed her lips together. You want to make sure there's nothing bad? By then, Carter had approached and rested a hand on Willow's shoulder. She whispered that it was time for Faith and the others to be transported to the hospital for evaluation. Willow turned to Carter, shook her head, and then quietly faced Faith again. Faith advised her to confirm everything with Giles. Willow placed a hand on Faith's shoulder and squeezed gently. She offered a silent thanks before closing the door and returning to Carter. They can't leave yet, Colonel. She hurried past the other Humvees, Carter heading back to where O'Neill and the others were gathered. Willow peered through the reinforced glass of each rear compartment before opening the vehicle where Giles sat. Giles! He looked up at her. His defeated expression shifted to confusion and then hardened with a trace of anger. You lied, Giles breathed. Your voice was in my head, and you lied about not using magic. Willow, everything was a lie, and I would love to rehash all of this again, including the fact that what I do is classified, but I need to know if there is anything dangerous in the council buildings. Giles stared at her, at a loss for words. Willow pressed her lips together before addressing him again in his mind. Giles, is there anything inside that's dangerous? Anything world-ending? He looked away before responding quietly. No. Willow shut the door and returned to Carter, O'Neill, Daniel, and Tilk. Meanwhile, the Humvees began to roll out, escorted by two NID SUVs with Davis and Agent Barrett accompanying them. Just before reaching her team, Willow sensed someone watching her. She turned her head to the left and spotted a barely lit figure standing on the roof of another building. The figure stepped closer to the light. Willow drew in a breath. It was Angel. The others had not noticed him, too absorbed in their conversation. Willow understood the danger of magic. She knew what could happen if the wrong people gained access to spellbooks or artifacts. She trusted O'Neill and her team not to misuse anything they secured. She also suspected not everyone in the military would be so restrained. Magic in the wrong hands would be a catastrophe waiting to unfold. She imagined different outcomes if powerful magic fell into the wrong hands. At least half of those scenarios were devastating. She told herself she was doing this for the greater good and reached out telepathically. Angel, it's me. I don't know if you had any idea what Buffy and the others were planning, but... She steadied herself, eyes fixed on him. I'm not using magic to speak to you. This is something else. Don't even consider trying to rescue Buffy or the others. I am completely serious. They did some terrible things, and even so, I'm going to try to help them. If you or anyone else interferes, no one will listen to me. We're leaving soon. When we do, get any spellbooks and artifacts out of here. The figure stiffened before stepping back into the shadows and disappearing. Willow resumed her approach to her team. O'Neill mentioned he would coordinate with the NID, Homeworld Command, and the Army regarding what came next. For now, he asked if she was ready to head home. Willow nodded. She took a deep breath and mentally informed O'Neill that she wanted to make an appeal on behalf of Buffy and the others. She nearly winced at the surprise on O'Neill's, Carter's, and Daniel's faces, while Teal'c inclined his head slightly in curiosity. Willow knew this would not be easy, but she began anyway. I can only guess why this happened. She pressed her lips together before continuing mentally. The last time Buffy came to Colorado Springs, she turned to Carter and clarified that it had been the day before they met at the coffee shop when Carter first introduced Pete. Carter nodded and Willow went on. Buffy told me about a war, a secret war where witches, seers, watchers, and potential slayers, girls who might one day become slayers, were being hunted and killed by a magic user called the Unmaker. Before anyone could interrupt, Willow raised both hands to her chest, signaling for them to let her finish. I don't know the entire story. From what Xander, Buffy, and Faith told me, the Unmaker's attacks were global. Thousands may have died. I only know what they shared with me, but it sounds like there were betrayals, secrets. O'Neill rubbed the back of his neck as the others tried to grasp the scale of a hidden war like that. Even if that's true, Red, he replied. They took you. They hurt you. Willow closed her eyes and nodded. Let me see what I can do, O'Neill offered after a moment. He exhaled slowly before asking, You really want to speak up for them? They've saved the world many times, General. I at least want to try. O'Neill gave a single nod. Let's get you home first. The Rosenberg residence, 2350 hours. Willow didn't want to think about how to get to her car, which was parked at Buffy's home. She stepped out of the Humvee along with Carter, Daniel, and Teal'c that had dropped her off at her house. O'Neill, however, remained inside the rear compartment with his cell phone glued to his ear, continuing the call he had been on for the past 5 minutes after leaving the Slayer Council compound. After ending the call, O'Neill leaned out of the vehicle and announced, I'm headed off to DC. I have a meeting with the president and a few other interested parties. He shifted his gaze to Willow. Carter's having the healing device brought here to fix you up. After that, I need you on a flight to DC. DC, sir? Willow asked. The president wants to be briefed on everything that happened, O'Neill explained. And you are the closest person we have to an expert on the supernatural. He'll want to know everything about the whole Unmaker deal. About the supernatural, vampires, demons, and so on. Oh, Willow squeaked. The president. She was briefing the president. She was briefing the president on demons, vampires, and the wiggy things in the dark. Willow shook her head. She didn't know much about what had happened with the Unmaker, and she told O'Neill as much. The healing device should be here by 7 in the morning tomorrow, Carter noted after checking her watch. We'll have Willow healed up, and then she can talk to her, well, friends, Willow finished. A sharp pain bloomed in Willow's chest when she thought about Buffy and the others. Despite everything that had happened, she still, no matter how much she tried, could not think of them as her former friends. But what had happened at Slayer Council had happened. That was something that could not be denied. Still, she needed information on the Unmaker War, and she doubted Buffy and Giles would speak much to her. Xander might. Dawn was definitely out, though Dawn was someone Willow would have to face sooner rather than later. If Dawn were charged, her future could be over. Willow pushed that thought aside for now. She told Carter and the others that she would speak to both Xander and Faith the next day to gather information about everything that had happened with the Unmaker. Then she turned to O'Neill. Sir, could you find anything you can on an army program that used to be based out of Sunnydale? It was known as the Initiative. That would be important to the briefing. For context. O'Neill nodded. He instructed the others to stay with Willow for the night because of everything that had happened and pointed out that they all looked exhausted. Get some sleep, or at least try to. He looked at Willow again. I'll also notify Barrett that you'll be coming by the hospital to speak with your friends. Willow and SG-1 inclined their heads. The rear compartment door shut, and the Humvee pulled away. The team turned toward the house at the end of the empty driveway. The empty driveway. Willow groaned as her throat burned, then informed the others that her mother's car was at Buffy's place. She pulled her keys from her jeans, but Carter rested a gentle hand on Willow's shoulder. I'll call someone to pick up the keys and retrieve the car from Buffy's house, Carter offered. Willow thanked her and led them up the driveway to the front door. Joyce must hate me so much now, Willow thought as she unlocked the door. I just got her children arrested. She refused to cry, even though she felt moisture gathering at the corner of her eyes. She pushed the door open and flicked on the light so everyone could enter. Please make yourselves at home. I'm sorry I haven't been able to do any shopping for dinner. I was going to do it today, but then, well, you know what happened. It's all right, Willow, Carter replied, glancing around the living room as she moved further inside, Daniel and Teal'c following behind her. Willow shut the front door. There's a late-night pizzeria that delivers. Daniel, here's the number. She handed him the number so he could place the order, while Teal'c and the Colonel lingered near the entryway. Ma'am, Teal'c, there are 2 bedrooms upstairs. Teal'c, you and Daniel can take the master bedroom. It's comfortable enough for 3 people, and I'll bring a cot later. Ma'am, you can sleep in my room. Where will you sleep, Willow Rosenberg? Teal'c inquired. There's another cot in the study. I'll take that. I can take the study, Willow, Carter interjected. You should sleep in your room. I insist, Colonel. Please. That room has too many memories for me to handle right now. Alright, the pizzas have been ordered, Daniel announced as he emerged from the kitchen, setting the cordless phone aside. Maybe you guys should start without me. I'd like to lie down. I'll bring the cot into the master bedroom. Colonel, there's about $100 in the cookie jar next to the coffee machine. Please use that to pay for the pizza. It's the least I can do after causing all of you trouble today. And please, feel at home. The remote control should be on the coffee table. Willow Rosenberg, it has been no trouble to help a friend in a time of need, Teal'c assured her. Willow, you shouldn't be alone right now. You can talk to us, Carter added gently. Thank you, Colonel. Thank you, Teal'c. But I'm drained from today. Oh, there's some diet soda in the fridge in the basement. My mom says it tastes better or something. I've never tried it. Also, no matter what, please don't invite anyone inside even if they ask. And 2 people should collect the pizza from the delivery driver, just in case. That's a lot of rules, Daniel remarked. That's how I survived Sunnydale, Daniel. Good night, guys. Good night, the rest of SG-1 responded as Willow retreated upstairs. They could tell from her posture alone that their teammate was far from alright, but they chose to give her space to process the horrors of the day. Willow reached the 2nd floor and moved down the hallway slowly, her legs heavy as she struggled to make sense of what had happened earlier. Her friends had threatened her, attacked her, violated her mind, and she still had no idea what to think. When she reached the study, she closed the door softly behind her and leaned against it. She did not even make it to the cot or change her clothes before she slid down onto the carpet, remaining propped against the door as she stared at the full moon through the window across the room. At first, only a few tears slipped down her cheeks and onto her hands. Then she drew her knees to her chest, covered her face, and finally broke down in deep, shuddering sobs. Teal'c, who had quietly followed her upstairs, heard her crying through the door. He considered knocking to offer comfort, but at the last moment he decided against it, choosing to give her the privacy she needed to grieve. She knew the betrayal by those she considered friends would cut deeply, and he hoped they would be able to help her in time. Willow Rosenberg, you are not alone. If you wish to talk, SG-1 is here for you, Teal'c stated firmly through the door. He did not expect a response. He only meant to offer reassurance before heading back downstairs. Willow heard him. She simply could not bring herself to answer. As the night wore on, she remained seated against the door and eventually fell asleep there, the tears on her cheeks drying in the quiet dark. If that moment hit you the way it was meant to, let me know in the comments. What do you think hurts Willow the most right now? The betrayal or the guilt? And if you are enjoying the story, a like or share really helps more people discover it. The Rosenberg residence, the next morning, 0700 hours. It was Carter who woke first. For a moment she was confused about where she was, but after glancing at the pictures on the nightstand, she remembered that she was sleeping in Willow's room in Sunnydale. She slowly got up, placed her feet on the carpet and looked around. There was nothing unusual about Willow's room. A few posters on the walls, a desk covered with books with a backpack in one corner, and a closet full of clothes. It could have been any regular girl's room, not one who belonged to someone who used to face vampires and now regularly faced alien parasites and traveled to distant planets. She rose and stretched to work the stiffness from her muscles before heading to the restroom to freshen up. As she passed the room where the men were sleeping, she heard Daniel snoring and had to bite back a laugh. It was one of the unluckiest things in the world to share a tent off-world, or in this case, a room on Earth, with a snoring Daniel. After finishing in the bathroom, Carter made her way to the study where Willow had said she would be sleeping. Her heart ached for the youngest member of her team as she knocked softly on the door. She heard something thud against the wood twice before it opened, revealing Willow with red, puffy eyes. "Good morning, Willow," the Colonel greeted gently. "Morning, Colonel." "Did you sleep at all?" Carter asked, noticing the untouched cot behind her. "Kind of, ma'am. I slept leaning against the door. Just hit my head on it twice." "I'm sorry about that, Willow," Carter replied, studying the redhead for a moment. "Hey, do you want to hear something funny?" "Sure. Come on," the Colonel urged, lightly taking Willow by the wrists and guiding her to the hallway outside the master bedroom, where Daniel's snoring echoed like a Hoover vacuum cleaner. The two female members of SG-1 hurried back to Willow's room and laughed until tears streamed down their faces. "There, we missed that smile of yours last night," the Colonel remarked warmly. "Are you feeling a little better this morning?" "A little bit, ma'am. There's only so much I can cry in a day, but it helped." "I'm glad," the Colonel responded. "I can imagine what you must be feeling right now. Just know that we're here for you, alright?" "Yes, ma'am. I should go get washed up. I think there are eggs, coffee, milk, flour, and orange juice in the fridge. I can make egg and pancakes." "Alright," the Colonel acknowledged. "I'll go wake up Teal'c and Daniel. And I got a call from the Area 51 team. The healing device should be delivered to your house within the hour." "Thank you, ma'am. I'll see you and the guys downstairs." The Rosenberg residence, 0800 hours. After Carter and Willow finished breakfast and coffee, they settled at the dining table and talked. They were soon joined by Daniel and Teal'c. Willow listened as Carter shared stories about how General Jacob Carter, her father, used to take her and her older brother Mark to the park when they were children. Daniel and Teal'c would talk about their own lives before joining the Stargate program. Willow told them about the time she and the rest of the Scoobies came face to face with the child of the Hellmouth. They listened as she spoke of the craziness of that night in trying, and successfully, fending off a tentacled monster that nearly broke through the old high school library. "Fun times," Carter had said after Willow's story. Daniel chuckled and Teal'c nodded. Just then, the doorbell rang. Willow cautiously approached the door and peered through the peephole. A man in a dark suit stood on the porch, holding a metal case. Once Colonel Carter joined her at the door, Willow opened it. "Colonel Carter," the man greeted, inclining his head respectfully. "I am Dr. Stilson. I've brought the device from Area 51 as requested." "Thank you, Doctor," Colonel Carter replied, taking the briefcase from him. "Please wait in the car. I'll return this to you in a few minutes." Stilson nodded his head before turning and heading for the car parked on the driveway. Willow's gaze shifted to the car parked next to it. It was her parents' car. She breathed a sigh of relief before turning back into the house and closing the door behind her. After securing the briefcase, Colonel Carter asked Willow to close the door and lie down on the couch. "So, the device reacts with the naquadah in your blood, ma'am?" Willow asked. "Yes," the Colonel answered with a small smile. "Now shush. This takes a great deal of concentration." Willow stretched out on the couch. Carter slipped the device onto her hands and held it over Willow's throat, closing her eyes in focus. A few seconds later, the device began to glow, and Willow felt a tingling sensation deep in her throat. It was as if something were lightly scratching the inside. When the sensation faded, the glow dimmed and the device powered down. "All right, Willow," Carter announced, lowering the device. "That should do it. Can you try to talk?" "Hello. Testing. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Willow rasped, wincing slightly. "Ma'am, why do I sound like a female Clint Eastwood?" "It must be a side effect of repairing your vocal cords," the Colonel explained. "I think your old voice may return after you've used your regenerated vocal cords for a few months." "Why, ma'am?" Willow pressed. "Well, Dr. Brightman or Dr. Warner would be better equipped to answer that, the colonel responded. Thank you, ma'am, Willow murmured, for giving me my voice back. Think nothing of it, Willow, the colonel replied with a warm smile before placing the device back into the metal case. Together, they stepped out into the driveway. Here you go, Dr. Stilson, Carter called, handing over the briefcase. All in a day's work, Dr. Carter. He returned before reversing the car and driving away. Almost immediately, another unmarked car with government license plates pulled into Willow's driveway. Willow and Carter exchanged confused looks. They had not been expecting anyone else. The vehicle parked, and the driver stepped out, standing at attention before the two Air Force officers. Colonel Carter, Captain Rosenberg, Lieutenant Garza reporting for duty, the young officer declared, snapping a salute. Lieutenant, the colonel acknowledged, returning the salute. Who sent you here? General O'Neill, ma'am, he answered crisply. I've orders to deliver Captain Rosenberg's dress blues and this letter from both General O'Neill and the President of the United States. I'm also to drive Dr. Jackson, Murray, the captain, and yourself to witness the transfer of the prisoners at the hospital to the NID before taking you to the airport. A jet will be waiting to transport you to DC. Thank you, Lieutenant, the colonel replied. Please wait here while we get ready. Give us 2 hours. Yes, ma'am. He returned to the car and retrieved Willow's dress blues along with the 2 letters. Thank you, Lieutenant, Willow croaked, noticing the curious look he gave her. Sorry about the voice. I'm recovering from a bad cold. 2 hours later, everyone was ready to leave the house and Sunnydale. As the car pulled away, Willow glanced back at her home. A sharp pang of loss settled in her chest. She missed everything about this place, and she knew with quiet certainty that this could be the last time she returned to Sunnydale, at least until she learned to deal with everything that happened last night. Ma'am, Willow ventured, her voice still rough. I need to get a digital recorder. I'm planning to speak to Xander and Faith about the whole Unmaker thing and the initiative fiasco. I'm hoping hearing from them would help somewhat when I have to meet with the president. That shouldn't be a problem, the colonel replied. Willow nodded and rubbed her throat. She reminded herself to use the telepathy when speaking to Xander and Faith. It would be strange explaining why I'm talking all of a sudden without using magic. I'll tell them I have surgery scheduled at Colorado Springs. Yeah, that would work. White House, 1930 hours. Willow smoothed out her dress blues as she was escorted into the waiting area just outside the Oval Office. The woman accompanying her informed the president's secretary of Willow's arrival. The secretary, an older woman, probably in her mid-50s, looked up at Willow and asked her to take a seat, explaining that the president would be calling for her soon. Willow thanked the woman, who had accompanied her before the latter departed. She then sat down, the digital recorder resting in her pocket. It contained Xander and Faith's accounts of what had happened during the Unmaker War, as well as information about the initiative and Adam. The information about the Unmaker sent chills up and down Willow's spine. She drew in a deep breath, held it for a few seconds, and then slowly released it. From the corner of her eyes, Willow noticed the secretary picking up the ringing phone, murmur into the receiver, and then inform her that the president was ready to see her. The officer rose and straightened her uniform again, while the secretary reached for the door and pulled it open. Willow nodded to the secretary with a polite smile as she stepped into a room she had never imagined entering. She felt slightly nervous, but that feeling eased almost immediately when she spotted General O'Neill and General Hammond. They rose from one of the 2 couches facing each other, and the president stepped around the resolute desk, his lips forming a warm smile. Trying to appear as confident as possible, she approached the president and the generals and saluted. Captain Willow Rosenberg reporting as ordered. At ease, Captain, Hayes responded. I heard what happened last night. It's good to know you have your voice back. Thank you, sir, Willow replied with a toothy grin. Oh wow, I'm in the White House, in the Oval Office, standing in front of the president. Holy crap, she thought to herself. I'm glad you're safe, Willow, Hammond added. Thank you, sir, Willow replied. It's good to see you. At that, General Hammond smiled and nodded. Red, how come your voice sounds like that? O'Neill asked, gesturing toward his own throat. Colonel Carter believes my voice is a bit Clint Eastwoody since my vocal cords were just regenerated. She thinks everything should return to normal within a few months. I read Jack's report, Captain. Hayes noted as he motioned for everyone to take a seat on the two couches. They moved toward the middle of the room while Hayes continued. That was a very brave thing you did, severing your vocal cords. I don't think I could have done that. I wouldn't wish that on anyone, sir, Willow rasped. We're waiting on one more person, the Attorney General, the President explained as she gestured toward the sofas on either side of the rug bearing the presidential seal. Willow carefully maneuvered herself to sit beside O'Neill without stepping directly onto the seal. Once everyone settled into their seats, Hayes explained that the Attorney General would be read into the supernatural discussion they were about to have, including the possible consequences Buffy and the others might be facing. He mentioned that Donaldson had not yet been read into the Stargate program and clarified that he would decide later whether to brief him on that matter. Hayes checked his watch, then looked back at the others before remarking that the Attorney General should arrive within a few minutes. You know, Hayes began, his eyes fixed on Willow. The day I took office was the same day I learned about the Stargate and the dangers Earth faces. It was also the day I learned what the SGC has done to defend this planet. That actually stunned me for a while. I thought it was a bad joke from the chair of the Joint Chiefs. Then I started reading the mission reports. The next day, I received a letter from my predecessor pointing me to a presidential eyes-only file on a red-haired young lady who literally appeared out of nowhere and crashed into a briefing room at the world's most secret base. What shocked me even more was her explanation of how she ended up at the HTC. Sir, O'Neill interjected, trust me when I say that we were even more surprised. Willow noticed that General Hammond had lowered his head and was silently laughing. A moment later, he added, that was certainly a surprise. She almost gave me a heart attack. Sorry, sir, won't happen again, Willow chuckled. Well, General, now she's starting to give me heart attacks, O'Neill joked to Hammond while gesturing toward Willow. Sorry, sir, Willow replied with a smile, but thank you for the rescue last night. Captain, Hayes continued as he leaned forward slightly on the couch. Your file states that you don't practice magic anymore, but instead you have some sort of psychic ability. Is that accurate? Yes, sir, Willow confirmed. So, Hayes continued, what number am I thinking of right at this moment? That's not fair, sir, Willow replied with a grin. You keep changing the numbers. Impressive, Hayes remarked. At that exact same moment, Willow added, impressive, having spoken precisely what Hayes had been thinking. Hayes smiled. Just then, the secretary from earlier strode into the room and informed Hayes that Attorney General Donaldson had arrived. Hayes nodded and instructed her. Let him in. Everyone rose as a man in a dark chestnut suit entered the room. He had black hair, brown eyes, and appeared to be in his mid-50s. His lips were pressed into a thin line, and Willow sensed faint impatience emanating from him, as though he were wondering why he had been summoned to the White House. Hayes shook his hand with a polite smile before introducing him to the others. As you all know, Hayes began as Donaldson shook each of their hands. Eric is the Attorney General, and as I mentioned earlier, he doesn't know why we're here. Hayes gestured toward Willow, which is why Captain Rosenberg's presence here is vital. After Hayes invited everyone to sit down again, he took a separate chair while Donaldson settled beside Hammond. Hayes quickly summarized what had happened to Willow the previous day. Donaldson actually laughed after Hayes mentioned the Watchers' Council, vampires, and demons. Are you pranking me? He asked. No one laughed. This is a joke, he continued, beginning to rise from his seat. Willow glanced toward Hayes, who gave a small nod of approval for her to proceed. Mr. Donaldson, she began as she leaned forward. O'Neill and Hayes motioned for him to sit back down and listen. After Donaldson reluctantly lowered himself back onto the couch again, Willow continued, This will be hard to believe. I understand that. First of all, there are no mission files, classified tapes, or anything like that documenting everything I'm about to explain. I mean, we were just 3 high schoolers and a watcher. Hold on, Donaldson interrupted. You're asking me to believe that vampires and demons and... Yes, Willow cut in. They exist. I remember everything. I've been doing this, helping fight vampires and demons, since I was 16. Donaldson stiffened, as did Hammond and the others, even though they already knew her background. Sir, Willow addressed the president as she turned toward him. If you don't mind me asking, how much do you know about the Watchers Council? Not that much, Hayes replied. Only what my predecessor told me, that they were given the freedom to hunt and battle these evils, and that they were granted complete autonomy. Willow nodded before continuing. Have you heard of the Slayer, sir? Taking a wild stab in the dark here? Hayes responded. I'm guessing they're the ones who do the actual killing, or slaying. Yes, Willow confirmed as her thoughts drifted to Buffy. She still remembered being there while Buffy fought vampires, protecting her, Xander, Giles, and the world. Then she remembered the look on Buffy's face at the Slayer Council. It was almost unrecognizable now that she thought about it. Willow wondered about all the things Buffy had faced when she wasn't there, everything that had shaped the blonde Slayer. Willow suddenly realized that everyone was watching her. She offered a small smile before continuing. Into every generation, there is a chosen one. One girl in all the world. She alone will wield the strength and skill to stand against the vampires, the demons, and the forces of darkness, to stop the spread of their evil and the swell of their numbers. She is the Slayer. Willow looked at each of the men around her. That's the prophecy of the Slayer. She continued, the first time I heard that was when I met my best friend, Buffy Summers. Willow then gave a brief rundown of the threats they had faced, from the Master to the Mayor transforming into an Old One. She clarified that an Old One was a pure demon that had walked the earth eons ago. Willow then shifted her attention toward the pale Donaldson. So, demons and vampires exist. There is a girl chosen to fight these things, and on top of all of that, magic exists. Demons, vampires, supergirls, and magic, Donaldson murmured, looking as though his head were about to explode. Hayes stepped in. We're hearing this for the first time as well, Eric, so you're not alone there. The reason you're here, and the reason Captain Rosenberg is here telling us all this, is because something happened to her last night. So that we can get a handle on magic, vampires, demons, and the literal horrors out there, she's here to brief us. Okay, Donaldson replied with a nod. He looked dazed. Willow clapped her hands before beginning. Okay, here we go. She took a deep breath and continued. Before we go on, I've already mentioned this to General Hammond and General O'Neill. It's kind of the whole backbone for what happens in Sunnydale, and it has the potential to affect the world. Okay, so, Sunnydale is built on something called the Hellmouth. O'Neill and Hammond nodded, recalling the moment they had first heard about it from Willow years ago. Hayes mentioned he had recently read the memo, which was filed years back, but admitted that he hadn't really understood it. Donaldson looked confused, but he kept listening. The Hellmouth is exactly what it sounds like, Willow explained. It's a mystical convergence between multiple dimensions, most of them not good at all. Think of them as multiple hell dimensions. Willow waved her arms animatedly. Here's another way to think about it. All these hell dimensions are pressed against this one, and the walls separating them and ours are thinnest at the Hellmouth in Sunnydale. The Hellmouth is constantly releasing energy, and that energy attracts vampires, demons, and other beings of darkness to Sunnydale. This belief spread across Donaldson's face. Willow continued before he could say anything. Many have tried to open or access the Hellmouth for various reasons, including apocalyptic rituals. She leaned forward slightly. That's the basics of the Hellmouth. My friends and I have stopped vampires and demons from opening it, and we've stopped things that came out of it. Willow paused for a moment to center herself before continuing. Magic exists too. Ever since I joined the Air Force, I haven't used it, but... She extended her arm and formed a ball of light that floated above her palm. The same simple magic she had used the first time she appeared at the SGC. She continued as Donaldson's eyes widened. This is just a simple spell. She closed her hand and the light vanished. I haven't used magic in years, so I'm out of practice. There are witches, seers, and others like them in most places around the world, Willow continued. And, going back to the Slayer, magic is used to create the next one. The next one? Hammond asked, his eyebrows furrowing. When a Slayer dies, Willow explained, the power is mystically transferred to another potential Slayer. A girl who has the potential to become a Slayer. So, a Slayer has to die, O'Neill muttered, shaking his head. Buffy died once, Willow revealed. Everyone in the room tensed. She drowned after facing the Master. Xander performed CPR and revived her. But she died for those few minutes, and another girl, Kendra Young, was activated. Buffy still had her Slayer abilities though, but the Slayer line, ran through Kendra. And if Miss Summers dies again? O'Neill asked thoughtfully, recalling Carter mentioning something about Anne and Buffy being the same person, that a girl who had once been dead had captured their teammate. Willow bit her bottom lip before responding. I'll get back to Buffy. Donaldson nodded. Kendra died during the Acathla incident, Willow continued. I'll explain everything about that mess later. When Kendra died, the power transferred to Faith. That girl you were talking to last night, O'Neill asked. Willow nodded. So now there are 2 Slayers in the world, thousands or possibly tens of thousands of potential Slayers. Willow gestured with her hands. That's the gist of it. As for Buffy, she died again. Willow glanced at O'Neill. I'm sorry I didn't tell anyone, sir. She continued. Buffy did die a second time. I don't know the details, and I don't think they matter much for this briefing. But she died. And, well, she was resurrected. Excuse me? Donaldson leaned forward, his eyes wide. Everyone else stared in disbelief. Before anyone could respond, Willow continued. There is a natural order to things. You live, and then you die. There are spells capable of resurrecting the dead. But those spells are taboo because there's no guarantee that the person you resurrect is the person you knew. It could be something else. Or, to be more specific, it most likely would be something different. Willow drew in a deep breath. No one is meant to resurrect the dead. From what I've learned, Buffy's death was mystical, so her resurrection was very possible. This is heavy, Donaldson murmured. I think all of us could do well to take a break, Hayes declared, his voice strained. Give us some time to absorb what we've learned so far. Everyone in the room nodded silently in agreement. Donaldson and the others were reminded by the president of the classified nature of everything they had learned and would learn during the briefing. It served as a subtle reminder not to discuss anything with anyone during the break. Willow watched Donaldson leave. He looked ill. You alright, Red? O'Neill asked as the president crossed to his desk and picked up the phone. Willow overheard him asking his secretary to prepare some paperwork for them to sign. Willow nodded to O'Neill. After ending the call to his secretary, Hayes asked, how old was Buffy when she became a Slayer? At what age are these girls selected? Willow replied, Buffy was called when she was 15, and I don't think there's a fixed age. What's the mortality rate? Hammond inquired. Willow sensed it was a question no one wanted to ask, because they were afraid of the answer. The vast majority of Slayers don't live past their first year before they're killed by some creature and the torch passes to the next one. Willow explained, Buffy and Faith are the only ones who have lasted this long, and that's only because they have a support system. The Watchers Council wanted Slayers to have no connections to friends or family. They wanted to fight alone for the sake of security and to protect those close to them. That's a lonely existence, Hayes remarked. This is the first time it's been scary for me, Willow admitted as she glanced towards Hayes. I've never seen Buffy or the others this paranoid before. Would you happen to know why? Hayes asked. At that moment, Donaldson returned. He settled into his seat, glanced at Willow, nodded, and apologized for being late. Hayes quickly filled him in on what had happened the previous night in Sunnydale. Donaldson appeared surprised that Willow's friends could do what they had done. Hayes explained that he had just asked Willow whether she knew why her friends had acted the way they did. Xander, my best friend, once told me that a branch of the military had built an underground base in Sunnydale and conducted secret experiments on demons, vampires, werewolves, witches, basically anything supernatural, Willow explained. He told me they succeeded in creating a demon-human hybrid, but the experiment got out of control, leaving Buffy and the others to clean up the mess. After that, she developed deep-seated negative feelings toward the military, especially classified programs. Willow inhaled deeply before continuing. Then there was the Unmaker War. She shook her head as she remembered what Xander had told her about the conflict. That war will be explained in a little bit, she continued. Buffy wanted to know what was so classified about my file. The more I insisted I couldn't tell her, the more paranoid she became. She started to think that maybe I was going to participate in something that would endanger her or the potentials. Willow lifted her gaze to Hayes and then to Donaldson. My friends have been fighting on their own for so long, and they've lost so much that I'm afraid they just broke. I've helped them save the world many times, and they've continued saving the world even after leaving Sunnydale, and not asking for anything in return. I'm asking you to please take that into consideration before deciding what charges to file against them. Captain, Hayes stated gravely, you do realize that they broke many federal and state laws, including illegally holding you prisoner, breaking into federal databases to conduct a background check, and, if I read the report from Agent Barrett and General O'Neill correctly, attempting to access Major Carter's and yours unredacted file before our people arrived to rescue you. Donaldson leaned forward, drew a deep breath, and then addressed her. Captain, I'll have to review the reports and files, but what exactly are you asking for? Sir, Willow replied as she looked around the room. Sirs, I'm not saying they shouldn't be punished. I think they should be. I'm just asking that the fact they've saved the world numerous times be taken into consideration. I know they need a lot of help. They need counseling and therapy, especially Buffy, Dawn, Giles, and Xander. Willow then took out the digital recorder and placed it on the table. I spoke to Xander and Faith about what happened. I wanted to know why they did what they did. She pressed play. They listened as Willow confirmed the date and time of the recording before Xander began speaking, followed by Faith. The recording detailed everything that had happened after Willow left. They spoke about the initiative and Adam, followed by what had happened during the Unmaker War. They were shaken by the details. After all, they had all heard about the destruction of the Wolfram and Hart building in LA, but thought it was just a human-based terrorist attack. They stiffened upon hearing the destruction of Wolfram and Hart around the world were also the Unmaker's doing. They stiffened at hearing the destruction of the Watchers Council, which had Hayes point out there was no governing body for slayers or anyone combating the supernatural. Willow shook her head. She didn't miss the glances between Hayes and the others. All thoughts were pushed aside to hear Xander and then Faith's voice. Nearly 4 hours passed in silence before the recording finally ended. After the recording, Willow explained everything she could remember about the Agathla incident. Afterward, Hayes thanked Willow. Donaldson, who still looked stunned, also thanked her and assured her that the recording and future interviews would be taken into consideration. He explained that they would conduct additional interviews over the next couple of days. Willow nodded. Soon afterward, she was dismissed after being informed that they would now discuss the initiative and the classified files related to that program. Willow stood and thanked them for listening. As she exited the room, all she could do was hope they had truly heard her, that whatever punishment awaited the Scoobies would be balanced. She checked her watch. Buffy and the others should be at the NID headquarters by now. She decided she would talk to Faith and Xander first, then grab some dinner before heading back to the hotel. To be continued.